In the later stages of life, many people find themselves leaning excessively into friendliness, politeness, and affability, a compulsive urge to be agreeable at all costs. Beneath this outward behavior lies a psychological structure developed over decades, one that often remains unconscious: the persona. The persona is the social mask one wears to function in society, the curated image we present to the world. In youth and midlife, this mask is essential. It helps us integrate into the social order, form relationships, build careers, and find acceptance. But in old age, when the call of the inner world becomes louder and the role-playing of outer life should begin to diminish, the continued over-identification with this persona becomes dangerous. This danger is not dramatic in a worldly sense. There may be no explosions, no visible collapse, but it is perilous to the soul. The elder who clings to the persona of the friendly old man or the sweet elderly lady often does so not out of true kindness, but out of fear of being disliked, fear of being alone, fear of facing the unresolved contents of the inner life. These individuals may have spent decades avoiding confrontation, suppressing darker feelings, and hiding behind a smile. What they don't realize is that the smile has hardened into a mask, and the mask has suffocated the true self. In this phase of life, the psyche no longer needs the validation it once did. It seeks something more profound, a reckoning with the self, a return to wholeness. This wholeness cannot be achieved while clinging to a pleasant image or maintaining false harmony. Excessive friendliness, when it is used to avoid discomfort or conflict, is a symptom of imbalance. It suggests that the individual has not yet disengaged from the performance required in earlier life stages. They are still playing a role that served them once, but now obstructs the deeper task of inner integration. This tendency is subtle and socially rewarded. People admire the amiable elder, the one who always agrees, who never criticizes, who remains endlessly tolerant and forgiving. But such a person may be suffering from spiritual stagnation. They may be numbing themselves to their own unresolved pain. They may have unresolved anger, sadness, or bitterness that they never dared to confront, and now mask it with over-politeness. They may be haunted by the feeling that something vital was left undone, some truth left unsaid, some boundary never drawn, but instead of facing it, they retreat further into the persona. When we identify too strongly with our outward face, we forget that it is only a fragment of our whole self. The real self, the totality of our conscious and unconscious, is far more complex. In old age, the soul urges us to stop playing roles and start becoming what we truly are. This often involves admitting to ourselves that we are angry, that we have been wounded, that we are tired of always being agreeable. It demands that we strip off the mask of friendliness and risk being seen in our raw, unpolished truth. The individual who has not done this work often continues to placate, to flatter, to appease. They become victims of their own need to be liked. They feel anxiety when others disapprove and guilt when they say no. They stretch themselves thin, trying to please everyone, and in doing so, betray their own needs. Their friendliness becomes less a gift and more a compulsion, not a free act of love, but a duty bound by fear. They serve others not from overflow, but from depletion. At its root, this excessive friendliness is a spiritual evasion. It is a refusal to withdraw the projections cast upon the world and to own them as internal realities. The smile becomes a shield, protecting the ego from the truth that it is not universally loved, not always good, not perfect. This truth is not something to be feared, it is liberating. The psyche matures not through denial of imperfection, but through the acceptance and integration of all aspects of the self, light and shadow alike. Reclaiming the shadow in old age is not merely an act of psychological adjustment, it is a spiritual necessity. Throughout life, we are taught to suppress what is socially unacceptable: our anger, envy, resentment, pride, lust, and even our honest judgments. These aspects of ourselves, though natural, become repressed and exiled into what Jung called the shadow, the unconscious reservoir of the parts of ourselves we deny, reject, or disown. In youth, this repression may be functional, even necessary. We must conform to survive. We must play the social game. But in old age, when the outer ambitions have faded and the need to compete has softened, the real work of inner integration begins. If the shadow remains buried, the self remains incomplete. Many elders continue to suppress their shadow selves under the guise of friendliness. They become overly agreeable, avoid confrontation, smile too quickly, and bend their values in the name of peace. On the surface, they are admired for their kindness and warmth. But within, there may be a gnawing sense of falseness, a quiet grief for having never spoken their truth or acknowledged their full range of emotions. They may feel invisible, not because the world has forgotten them, but because they have abandoned parts of themselves long ago. By refusing to confront their inner conflicts and hidden desires, they shrink into a sanitized version of who they once were. This continued suppression often leads to projection. What is repressed within will inevitably be seen outside the self. The elder who suppresses their anger may see the world as increasingly hostile. The one who denies their pride may feel judged and looked down upon by others. This dynamic feeds bitterness, isolation, and passive aggression. Rather than reclaiming their inner life with honesty and clarity, they lash out subtly, couching resentment in sarcasm or silence. They may not even recognize this behavior in themselves because they still identify with the role of the nice old person who never causes trouble. But there is nothing noble in hiding one's shadow. In fact, it is a form of self-betrayal. The deep wisdom that comes with age is not born from being pleasant. It is born from seeing and accepting all of who we are. The shadow contains energy, vitality, and truth. It is not inherently evil or destructive. It is simply the unlived life. To reclaim the shadow is to retrieve the parts of ourselves we buried to be accepted by others. This reclamation gives us depth and authenticity. It makes us real, not merely liked. There is a profound irony here. The very qualities that elders suppress in order to be accepted, their anger, their authority, their sharp insight, are often the qualities that could liberate them. When integrated, the shadow does not become destructive. It becomes discerning. The elder who has reclaimed their anger becomes someone who knows how to protect what is sacred. The one who accepts their pride learns how to walk with dignity. The one who acknowledges their judgments can finally speak truth without fear. These are not signs of regression, they are signs of wholeness, yet society does not encourage this process. The elderly are expected to become symbols of soft, spoken grace, harmless and yielding. This expectation robs them of their final transformation. It keeps them from embodying the full range of human experience. But the soul longs for totality, not perfection. It wants to be real, not revered. To be fully alive in old age, One must step beyond the expectations of others and reclaim the disowned parts of the psyche. This means confronting painful memories, acknowledging past wrongs, expressing buried emotions, and refusing to play the role of the ever-smiling elder who sacrifices their authenticity for approval. This work is not comfortable. It requires courage, honesty, and solitude. It demands that one look into the mirror and admit, yes, I too have been cruel, I have been jealous, I have judged, I have failed. Only through this admission does transformation begin. The elder who integrates the shadow becomes not a diluted version of themselves, but a more complete one. Their words carry weight, not because they are sweet, but because they are true. Their presence becomes powerful, not because they are pleasing, but because they are whole. The journey of reclaiming the shadow in old age is not about becoming less friendly, but about becoming more real. Individuation over approval is the essential task of old age, a deep calling from within that urges the individual to abandon the lifelong pursuit of being liked in favor of becoming whole. For much of life, people are driven by the need for acceptance from family, from peers, from society at large. This desire to be liked shapes how one speaks, behaves, even thinks. It governs how one dresses, what opinions one shares, what emotions one allows themselves to feel. Approval becomes a form of currency, and many trade away pieces of their authenticity to gain it. But in old age, this currency loses value. The world no longer watches so closely. The social games no longer promise the same rewards. The time has come not for more performance, but for the unveiling of the true self. Individuation is the process of becoming who one truly is beneath the layers of adaptation, conformity, and persona. It is the unfolding of the unique essence of the individual, the synthesis of conscious and unconscious parts into an integrated whole. This process, while always relevant, takes on a deeper urgency in later life. The outer structures that once defined the self, career, reputation, physical beauty, social roles, begin to dissolve. What remains is the raw material of the psyche, waiting to be faced without disguise. The hunger for approval, which has long shaped the ego, becomes an obstacle to this unfolding. It keeps the individual trapped in a false identity, one that no longer fits the soul. The tragedy is that many elders never begin this inward journey. They continue seeking approval even when it no longer serves them. They become overly agreeable, avoid expressing controversial thoughts, and soften their truth to remain palatable. They shrink themselves so as not to offend. They are hesitant to speak hard. One incites for fear of being labeled judgmental or outdated. This compulsive friendliness, born from the need to be accepted, stunts their inner growth. They may appear wise, but wisdom without truth is hollow. They may appear kind, but kindness that conceals one's deeper self is not a virtue, it is a mask. Individuation asks more of the elder than surface harmony. It asks for solitude, for silence, for confrontation with one's inner contradictions. It asks for the courage to say, I am no longer here to please you. This is not arrogance, but the necessary shedding of illusion. The individual who continues to chase approval in old age is delaying the final and most important transformation of their life. They are still trying to earn love from the outside when the task is to find wholeness within. Approval is fleeting. It changes with moods, trends, and perceptions. But individuation is eternal. It is the soul's movement toward its original form, untouched by opinion or praise. To individuate, one must allow themselves to offend, to be misunderstood, even to be rejected. These are not failures. They are signs of liberation. The person who says what they truly mean, who reveals what they truly feel, who no longer hides behind social niceties, this person has begun to free themselves from the tyranny of public image. They are no longer seduced by the need to be liked, because they are rooted in something deeper than approval. They are rooted in the truth of their being, in a sense of identity that is not borrowed or performed, but discovered. Old age offers a narrow window for this work. The distractions have lessened. The ego has been bruised enough to finally listen. But still, the temptation to remain likable persists. One may fear isolation, conflict, or judgment. One may cling to old roles, the helpful neighbor, the gentle grandparent, the wise mentor, not because they are true, but because they are safe. But the soul does not care for safety. It cares for authenticity. Individuation requires that one take off the costume and walk into the unknown interior. It requires that one honor their contradictions, speak their unpopular truths, and stop shaping themselves to match what others want them to be. This is not a selfish act, it is a sacred one, for only in becoming whole can the elder offer the world something real. Only by shedding the need to please can they touch the deeper layers of their own psyche and emerge as something more than just pleasant. They emerge as real, flawed, integrated beings who no longer depend on applause to feel alive. The image of the elder as a gentle, endlessly giving figure has long been romanticized, but beneath this ideal often lies a painful truth. The wise one who has not learned to set boundaries becomes a shell of their potential. In old age, when the individual is meant to embody wisdom, clarity, and spiritual authority, excessive friendliness becomes a distortion. It turns the elder from a source of insight into a soft cushion for the needs and demands of others. Kindness without discernment is not wisdom. It is a weakness dressed as virtue. The archetype of the wounded wise one emerges here, the individual who has accumulated deep life experience, but has not yet learned to protect their inner sanctum. They give too much, speak too little of what matters, and tolerate what should be rejected. The wounds of the wise often originate from a life spent serving, pleasing, compromising, and adapting. These experiences can be transformative, shaping the elder into a person of depth and compassion. But if those wounds are never healed, never turned into strength through conscious integration, they remain open, sensitive, and vulnerable. The elder then becomes someone who cannot say no without guilt, who cannot walk away from draining conversations, who continues to absorb the emotional weight of others at the expense of their own peace. Their silence is not serene, it is suppressed pain. Their listening is not always compassion, it is often exhaustion. Without boundaries, even the most enlightened soul becomes lost in the noise of other people's chaos. Setting boundaries in old age is not about selfishness. It is about stewardship of inner energy. The aging psyche has a finite reservoir of attention and vitality. Every moment spent appeasing others or entertaining trivial obligations is a moment stolen from the deep inner dialogue that should define this life stage. Elders are not meant to be endlessly accessible. They are meant to be rooted, grounded, clear. This clarity cannot coexist with constant friendliness. Boundaries sharpen perception. They allow the elder to know who they are, where they end, and where others begin. Without them, the lines blur, and the elder dissolves into the needs of those around them, becoming a servant of the social world they should now be transcending. Wisdom, in its most authentic form, is not afraid to disrupt comfort. The elder must learn to speak truths that are unwelcome, to step back from relationships that no longer nourish, to guard their solitude with the same strength that a warrior guards a gate. Friendliness can still exist, but it must be born from abundance, not obligation. When friendliness is compulsive, when it is a response to fear, guilt, or the need for approval, it drains the soul. But when it arises from a place of grounded choice, it becomes a gift rather than a transaction. There is a mistaken belief that old age should be soft, yielding, endlessly tolerant. But true maturity is not without edge. It carries the weight of experience, the scars of choices made, the bitter fruits of past mistakes. This weight gives the elder the right, even the responsibility, to protect themselves from nonsense, manipulation, and emotional intrusion. The world does not need more nice old people. It needs more real ones, elders who say, "Enough," who walk away from noise, who stop pretending to enjoy what they do not, who stand firm in their inner knowing without apology. These individuals do not close themselves off. They become portals of clarity in a world drowning in distraction. Without boundaries, the elder becomes what others want them to be, not what they are meant to become. They are praised for their patience, their calm, their availability, but this praise masks a spiritual neglect. If the elder is always available, always smiling, always open, they are not practicing wisdom, they are performing it. And performance is the enemy of depth. The soul does not perform, it reveals. It speaks when moved to speak, and it withdraws when silence is needed. To honor this movement requires the courage to say no, to walk away, to remain still while others beg for attention. It requires the strength to claim solitude not as absence, but as sacred space where wisdom ferments and the self is remembered. The wounded wise one must learn this strength, or else their wisdom will remain dormant. Locked behind the door of endless accommodation, solitude in old age is often misunderstood. Many fear it, resist it, or mistake it for loneliness. But solitude, when approached with reverence, becomes something else entirely, a sacred space, a silent room within the psyche where the self meets itself without distraction or disguise. It is here in the quiet that the deepest work of old age takes place. The world outside begins to recede, relationships thin, work falls away, social status loses its luster. And with this falling away, an invitation is issued not from the world, but from the soul itself to turn inward, to listen, to remember. Throughout life, people are conditioned to seek connection. They are told that meaning comes through relationships, that fulfillment lies in being with others, serving others, entertaining others. And for a time, this is true. In youth and middle age, we develop through our interactions with the world, measuring ourselves against others, learning through love, conflict, intimacy, and loss. But as one ages, that outward movement is meant to give way to a more inward direction. The self that once scattered its energy in many directions must now recollect itself. This recollection does not happen in the noise of endless interaction, but in the silence of being alone. Yet many elders resist this silence. They become excessively friendly, overly social, compulsively available. They fear that if they stop engaging, they will be forgotten. If they do not keep smiling, reaching out, making conversation, they will be swallowed by irrelevance. So they stay busy, stay accommodating, stay present in every room except the one that matters most, the inner chamber where the final integration of the soul must occur. This resistance to solitude is often masked as generosity, as kindness, as sociability, but underneath it lies fear. Fear of being left alone with thoughts unspoken, regrets unresolved, wounds unhealed. Solitude, real solitude, forces the individual to confront everything they have avoided. In the absence of distraction, memories rise. Feelings long suppressed demand acknowledgement. The voices of past choices, both wise and foolish, echo in the mind. This can be terrifying. It can feel like the very thing one has worked a lifetime to escape. But this confrontation is not punishment, it is purification. The soul, if it is to grow, must pass through this fire. It must face its shadow not with judgment, but with the calm, clear gaze of acceptance. In this way, solitude becomes sacred. It is no longer just the condition of being alone. It is the condition of being real. The masks fall away, the performances end, the elder is left with nothing but what they truly are, and in this state, something extraordinary can occur. The self, stripped of its defenses and distractions, begins to hear the voice of the deeper world, the unconscious, the archetypal, the eternal. This voice does not speak in words, but in symbols, dreams, sudden insights, and a quiet knowing that cannot be explained but only lived. This is the true reward of embracing solitude in old age, a direct encounter with the mystery of being. The individual is no longer trying to be anything for anyone. They are no longer chasing applause or avoiding discomfort. They are simply present, aware, inwardly attentive. This presence becomes a kind of inner light, one that does not need to shine outward to be real. Others may not see it. They may even find the elder distant, aloof, or changed. But what has changed is not the elder's kindness or goodness, it is their allegiance. They no longer serve the social world, they serve the truth. In solitude, the elder remembers that they are not just a parent, a grandparent, a neighbor, a friend. They are a soul, ancient, complex, unfinished. And the work of that soul does not end with retirement or with grandchildren or with community service. It deepens, it thickens, it calls for quiet, and in that quiet, the self comes home to itself. The search for meaning shifts from outer affirmation to inner resonance. The soul does not care how many people liked you. It cares how deeply you listened when no one else was speaking. Stop being too friendly in old age, not because friendliness is wrong, but because it is often a mask worn too long, a habit that conceals the soul's final work. Old age is not a time to soften into irrelevance, but to sharpen into essence. It is the hour to shed the persona, to stop trading truth for approval, to let go of compulsive agreeableness that robs the spirit of its gravity. The elder who dares to speak honestly, who sets boundaries without guilt, who reclaims their shadow and walks alone into sacred solitude, becomes not less, but more. More real, more whole, more human. This is not the end of a life. It is the completion of a self. Let others be comforted by your presence if they must, but above all, let your presence be true. The world does not need your politeness. It needs your truth.